first thing we do when a dog comes to us for gun dog training is to get him retrieving the bird on both land and water. We do this in a fun and playful way, enticing the dog to pick up the bird. We have the dog on a long line or check cord, so we can pull the dog back to us once he has picked up the bird. This can take a couple of days or a couple of weeks, depending upon if the dog's had previous work at home or has completed the Puppy Head Start training program. We also work on some basic obedience training at this time, teaching the dog to heel and sit on the training collar and leash. We introduce the use of a heeling stick to guide the dog, which helps us later when we start heeling the dog off leash. We also teach the dog to come into us with the here command and sit at our left side in the heel position. This is the position he will later assume to deliver the bird. Once the dog is retrieving well on both land and water, we teach the dog the hold and fetch commands on the training table. The training table has an overhead cable with a short length of chain that attaches to the dog's collar. This allows the dog to move laterally up and down the length of the table. We start the dog sitting on the table and place the bumper in his mouth, commanding hold, tapping him on the chin to prevent from dropping it. We use the drop command to have the dog release the bumper. Once the dog is holding well, we teach him to walk with the bumper up and down the table, to sit and deliver the bumper with the drop command. To teach the fetch command, we apply pressure to the dog's ear by pinching it and commanding fetch. When the dog opens his mouth, we put the bumper in and command hold. We progress this until the dog is reaching out for the bumper on the command fetch. Once the dog learns the association of the pressure with reaching for the bumper, we will reinforce this command with the electronic collar. We advance this exercise until the dog will pick the bumper off the table with the fetch command. While we are doing our table work, we end each session by taking the dog out and doing some fun retrieves on land and water, as well with a little obedience. This helps the balance of the training, keep the dog's attitude positive. These important lessons form the basics of mouth control in a retriever. The table work usually takes several weeks to complete. Once the dog is performing the fetch and hold commands well on the table, we progress by having the dog fetch the bumper from the ground. With the dog on the leash in the heel position, we position the bumper a few feet ahead of him and command fetch. We then heel and sit the dog while holding the bumper so he gets the idea of walking and carrying it. We then have him sit and deliver with the drop command. At this point, we go back to the here command and have the dog come into our left side to the heel position to deliver. By doing these basics on the leash, it is a controlled situation. Usually when our dog is performing these commands sufficiently and retrieving enthusiastically, we will do a little here work with the electronic collar in our obedience sessions, as most dogs will not want to come in directly with the bird, but rather play with it a little. The dogs must respond well to here command before we start formal bird work. The next step in our training is to have an assistant shoot and throw a dead bird in a controlled environment in the training yard. The handler has the dog at heel beside him with the long line attached to his collar. The assistant shoots the gun and throws the bird. The handler can steady the dog with the sit command and release the dog to retrieve by saying his name. When the dog picks up the bird, the handler blows 2 tweets on the whistle and commands here, giving him a tug on the rope if necessary. The handler uses the rope to guide the dog into the heel position to sit and deliver the bird. When this is smooth, which usually takes a few days, we can discard the rope, as by now all of our commands have been reinforced with the electronic collar. By adding the gunshot at this point is rarely a problem, as the dog is already well established in his retrieving. Use a white bumper or bird to teach water delivery. It is sometimes best to start with a bumper and transition to a bird depending upon the dog. Our assistant shoots the gun and throws the bumper into the water. The handler has the dog sitting at heel on the long line. He releases the dog with his name. He blows 2 tweets on the whistle and gives the here command, at the same time giving a slight tug on the rope when the dog picks up the bumper. The handler keeps a slight pressure on the rope, reeling it in as the dog returns. To the shore, where he is most likely to drop the bumper, the handler lifts the dog head upward out of the water with the rope and has him sit in front holding the bumper without shaking off. If the dog drops his head or shakes, he will most likely drop the bumper. That is why the rope is necessary, so the handler can prevent the dog from dropping his head and thus dropping the bumper. Once the dog is settled, holding the bumper, sitting, facing the handler can guide the dog into the heel position and have him sit and deliver the bumper. Then the dog is allowed to shake off. After shaking, the dog is commanded to sit and is ready for his next retrieve. With the basics completed, which usually takes about a month, if all goes well, the dog is ready to load up on the dog truck every day and go out to various locations on the property where we simulate a variety of actual hunting situations. We begin each day by loading the dogs up into their individual kennel boxes on the truck. We use the kennel command to have the dog jump up to the kennel box and then go out for a group exercise period to socialize and air out. The dogs are exercised in groups of 5 or 6. They must learn to interact and play with other dogs in a civilized manner, do their business, and come back in to kennel up when called. No pecking order or aggressive behavior is allowed. Now the dogs are ready to go out to do their work in the field. The dogs are worked individually on their marked retrieve. We teach the dog to come out of his box and sit down, ready to go to work. By now the dogs are heeling off leash and using the heeling stick to guide them. The dogs heel up to the line and sit. An assistant shoots and throws a bird or mark. The dog is steadied by the handler and released on his name. The important thing a dog learns by throwing marks in variable cover and terrain is to use his nose and the wind to learn to hunt the cover to come up with the bird. It takes daily repetition and literally hundreds of marks for the dog to become consistent and hunting well. The dog must return directly to the handler on 2 blasts of the whistle and deliver the bird properly from the heel position. We will repeat the same mark if the dog has difficulty on coming up with the bird, is unsteady, or delivers poorly. We start the dogs from marking from the sit position so that their plane of sight is higher and they can mark the depth of the fall better. As we progress, we have the dogs mark from the down position as if they were laying down beside the duck blind. In the water, the dogs learn to retrieve through decoys, over islands, and a variety of cover changes to simulate various duck hunting situations. We have an assistant shoot and throw a duck. The handler runs the dog from the down position. Water work is often more difficult for the dogs if they are not strong swimmers or do not have a high retrieving desire. It requires more effort and persistence for the dogs to stick with the hunt in the water to come up with the bird. Often, a lot of repetition is required before the dog can make a clean retrieve, swimming directly out to the bird and make a proper delivery. Quartering in front of the gun and flushing trains the dog for upland or pheasant hunting. Most dogs love it as it is exciting and fun for the dog. Live pigeons are planted in the field before we release the dogs into the field. We teach the dog to move back and forth in front of the gunner in a windshield wiper pattern. We encourage the dog to move out and hunt with the command, "Find the bird." It is important that you haven't overstressed the obedience heel command at this point, or the dog will be reluctant to leave your side. We encourage the dog to hunt and switch directions, walking first right, then left, to get the dog moving down the field, back and forth. When the dog finds the bird and flushes it, the gunner shoots the bird and the dog makes the retrieve. Quartering is usually done in the later stages of the 3-month course, as it requires the dog to be more responsive to commands and the whistle, as live birds are very exciting for the dog. This concludes what we cover in our basic Retriever Gun Dog program. During the 3-month course, we would like you to come up once a month for a one-on-one, hands-on training session with the trainer, you, and your dog. During these sessions, you will be taught how to handle your dog in actual simulated bird hunting, retrieving scenarios, and basic obedience. We do offer more advanced training, teaching hand signals and multiple retrieves for dogs that have the aptitude and hunters that hunt more difficult duck blind situations. This training usually takes several more months and is invaluable in situations where the dogs are unable to see or mark the falls, usually due to cover or the configuration of the blind.